Vernon. Welcome to the Mount Vernon SSPA Task Force meeting number 3 for Tuesday, April 6, 2021. For those that may be new on the call, I am Task Force Co-Chair and Planning Commissioner Walter Clark, and I'm also joined by the Co-Chair and Planning Commissioner Tim Sargent. We welcome you all tonight. And to conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and emergency ordinance, the Mount Vernon District SSPA Task Force needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. It's a bit cumbersome, so I ask you in advance for your patience. First, because each member of the task force is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and each member's voice is clear, audible, at an appropriate volume for all other members. Accordingly, I am going to conduct a roll call and ask that each task force member participating in this meeting to state your name and location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. I now conduct the roll call. Mr. Tim Sargent.
Commissioner Sargent is here at the Mount Vernon Supervisor's Office.
Ms. Hillary Clausen. Ms. Catherine Ward. Catherine Ward.
Catherine. Where'd she go? I don't know. We'll come back to her. I'll text her.
Ms. Gretchen Walsey. Mr. David Levine, we know he's absent tonight. Ms. Holly Doherty. Mr. Evan Kaufman.
Holly will be absent tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Evan Kaufman.
This is Evan Kaufman calling in from Richmond, Virginia.
Ms. Mary Payton.
Mary will also be absent tonight.
Ms. Queenie Cox.
Queenie Cox from Gum Springs.
Ms. Ellen Young.
Ellen Young at Bellevue.
Mr. Hamid Munir.
I believe he's also going to be absent.
Mr. Lynn Pasco.
I'm Len Pasco. I'm at my home in Montebello.
Ms. Tracy Wood.
Tracy will be absent.
Okay, let's go back to Ms. Catherine Ward.
Yes, ma'am, sir. I'm here in my house on Gladstone Place.
There you are.
And did Gretchen join us?
Yep.
Yes,
Gretchen's
I'm
on.
here. I'm at my home on Newmarket Road.
And Walter Clark is here at Mount Vernon District Supervisor's Office. Thank you very much. At this point, I will pass the virtual gavel to the co-chair so that I may be heard to make the requisite motion. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of the Mount Vernon District SSPA Task Force. So moved.
Commissioner, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Second by Ellen Young, was that?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels the emergency procedures. The fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for the public to access this meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the task force to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such, FOIA's usual procedures which requires the physical assembly of the task force and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the task force may conduct this meeting electronically through the dedicated video and audio conferencing line, and that the public may access the meeting by registering through the meeting link on the track plan amendment page of SSPA website at www.fairfaxcounty.gov/planning-development/SSPA/south/plan-amendment, or by calling 1-844-621-3956 TTY 711 and entering access code 129-013-4661. It is so moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Second.
Gretchen.
Thank you, Gretchen. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Finally, it is next required that all of the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the emergency itself, are necessary for continuity in the Fairfax County government, and or are statutory required necessary to continue the operations and the discharge of the Mount Vernon District SSPA Task Force's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved.
Do I hear a second?
Aye.
Second.
Okay, was that Catherine or Ellen?
Yes, sir.
Catherine,
Catherine.
okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
All right, thank you, Chairman Sergeant. Now, we should have read, we received a couple of comments from the public that was emailed to us today, I believe. And I hope you had a chance to read over those comments. And I don't know if we need to address any of those comments at this particular time. As we get into the presentation, we can bring up those comments and discuss them at that time if you choose. But before we get started with tonight's agenda, did anyone have any questions or issues with the comments that we received from the public? I believe it was 3 comments that I saw, written comments. Okay, hearing none.
Well, this is Queenie. So
Yes,
are we going to
Queenie.
address the comments? We're going to address the comments with the nomination, or we're going to discuss them now? Just for clarification.
Yeah, so that was a question that I, do we want to address it now, or do we want to wait till the nominations, we go over the nomination?
Recommend we wait so we don't get confused.
Agreed.
While doing the nomination.
Okay.
Sounds good. Let's see, now we will ask staff if they would be so kind to go over the Webex instructions for us.
Certainly. Thanks, Walter. This is Aaron Kleibaner with DPD. So for those of you attending, there are 2 ways you can let us know that you want to speak. First, if you're attending through Webex, down in the right-hand corner of your screen under the participants menu, you'll see a hand. So that's the raise your hand button. So just press that, and then we'll know that you want to speak. And after you're done speaking, please click that button again to lower your hand so that we don't get feedback on the line. And for those attendees who are calling in via phone, press *3 on your keypad to raise your hand that way to let us know. And again, when you're done speaking, press that again and to lower your hand. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Aaron. So next, we can go into the review of SSPA 2021-0 00006 2806 Hawkins Lane.
So Aaron, make Cedric the presenter.
This is Megan. Cedric, if you wouldn't mind just introducing the staff that are on the call as well before we start.
Yeah, of course. Hi there. Good evening, everyone. My name is Cedric Suzuki. I'm a planner too. I'm the main planner for this case. I'm joined tonight by Megan Van Dam, Graham Owen, Aaron Kleibanner from the Department of Planning and Development. I'm also joined tonight by Thomas Burke and Zach from SCDOT, Brian and, sorry, names are jumping around, Stephen from Urban Forestry tonight. And Sherry Aiken, the nominator for this application.
And Andy Dorlester is on the call from the Park Authority. Thank you all for coming.
All right, thank you.
I'm going to put this in presentation view momentarily. Can everyone see the presentation on the screen?
Yeah.
All good.
Okay, all right. Plan Amendment 2021-6, or 2806 Hawkins Lane, is located east of the Richmond Highway corridor along Hawkins Lane, in the northern portion of the Mount Vernon Supervisor District, right around where that dot on the graphic is. The subject site has been developed with a Verizon switching station and vacant wooden land which fronts onto Hawkins Lane. The switching station sits on approximately 1.3 acres of land. It's that highlighted area right there with the little building on it. The site consists of one of the few remaining unbroken tree canopies, left along the Richmond Highway corridor, which contains mature tree species. There are no heritage resources, cultural resources, or archaeological resources located on the site. The remaining vacant 4.2 acres are heavily wooded, and I apologize, I'm not sure why it's moving, are one of the few sites with substantial mature tree canopy coverage near Richmond Highway. This canopy offers numerous environmental and public health benefits related to the air quality, carbon capture habitat, stormwater detention and retention, and overall quality of life improvement through exposure to nature. So the board authorization for this plan amendment directed staff to evaluate a plan option for residential use at 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre on the subject property, with considerations for workforce housing in the development and an evaluation of the localized transportation network to determine the optimal access and minimize potential conflicts on streets surrounding the site. The amendment should include staff review of the adopted watershed plans and include appropriate recommendations as part of the staff analysis. Verizon, the property owner, is interested in retaining the switching station on site and selling off the remaining 4.2 acres for subdivision and the development of residential units. I apologize for that. Not sure why it's switching. The site is zoned for R3, and that translates up to 3 dwelling units per acre, which, if the 4.2 acres were subdivided, this would result in 12 dwelling units as a matter of by right development. County's concept for future development, which provides general overarching land use guidance for the entire county as part of the comprehensive plan, designates the subject property as a suburban neighborhood. Suburban neighborhoods contain a broad mix of residential densities, are planned for little to no change in land use, and recommend that infill development be of compatible use, type, and intensity with the surrounding areas. The current comprehensive plan map shows a density of 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre at the baseline level. The comp plan text recommends that if the site develops part of a plan recommendation for Memorial Heights, that residential infill should be developed at an intensity of 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre and be compatible with the surrounding land uses. This would result in approximately 12 to 16 units if the site develops as an extension of the Memorial Heights neighborhood. It should also be noted that the planned bus rapid transit stations along Richmond Highway at Beacon Hill Road and at Lockheed Boulevard are approximately 7/10 of a mile from the current property access point on Hawkins Lane. You can see that on the graphic shown below. The orange circle you see there is the half-mile radius from the site. So they're just a little bit, the stations are just a bit beyond that. So properties to the north and west of the subject site are located within the Memorial Heights neighborhood. These properties have been developed as single-family detached homes and are planned at a density of 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre. However, many of these are developed on smaller lots, so they range from half an acre to down to a quarter acre. The surrounding neighborhood to the east is planned for similar density to the subject property of 2 to 3 DUAC and built out as primarily single-family detached homes. There is an adjacent community of townhouses you see highlighted there in the green. This is currently planned for an intensity of 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre and was developed at an intensity of approximately 8 dwelling units per acre. This community was approved consistent with the site-specific plan recommendation that has since been removed from the plan for residential use at 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre, providing all of the units serve as moderate income households. The proffers were approved with the rezoning case ensuring that the homes would be sold at the moderate income housing level up to 80% of the average median income, and that a recreational area would be developed for the residents. But this has been expired, it's no longer valid, and recreational area never ended up being built. In 2014, Verizon was approved for a special exception on the subject property. The switching station facility, which you see highlighted there in yellow, was reduced in size to 1.3 acres in order to leave 4.2 acres for future residential development. Included within this exception were approvals for a landscaping plan, a waived barrier requirement on the southern property line, and a deviation from the tree preservation targets. The southern property barrier requirement was waived due to the landscape plan compensating for the lack of southern property barrier. The deviation from tree preservation targets was granted due to the presence of many undesirable invasive species among the greenery on the portion of the property. These plants are required to be removed per county policies and thus made it impossible for the applicant to meet the tree safe standard of the plan. So the primary land use considerations for this plan amendment are the following. The parcel is currently zoned for R3, as I mentioned before, and can be developed by right up to 3 dwelling units per acre. The proposed density of 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre is greater than the majority of the surrounding residential uses, which are primarily 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre and 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre. Except for the property immediately to the east, which was, as a reminder, approved in part due to the full commitment to affordable housing, the proposed density would be higher than the surrounding plan densities and the majority of the existing uses to the north, west, and east. The plan amendment would potentially double or almost triple the plan and zone density and the potential number of houses developed on this site. Further, the proposed housing type as townhouses would be different than the majority of the surrounding area, which is a single-family detached community. The county policy recommends that infill development, which this proposal would be considered, be of compatible use, type, and intensity with the surrounding areas. Additionally, like I'd mentioned earlier, the subject site is beyond the half-mile radius from the planned BRT stations, where county policy encourages higher densities to support transit ridership along the Richmond Highway corridor. So we're moving on to the agency comments now. These first set of comments are from housing. The affordable housing policies should also be considered for this proposed plan amendment. There is a recognized need in the county for additional housing, and particularly for housing that is affordable to households earning less than 80% of the area median income. For reference, 80% AMI means an annual income of $70,560 for a single adult, or approximately $100,800 for a household of 4. The housing element of the policy plan states there is significant need for housing assistance in the county and that determining acceptable locations for higher residential density is necessary as part of the strategy to provide more affordable units. Private development is critical in helping to address this need, and the 2 main tools that the county has for securing commitments to affordable housing are the Affordable Dwelling Unit Program, ADU program, and the Workforce Dwelling Unit Policy, WD. So some background here. For affordable dwelling units, the ordinance requires commitments for affordable housing up to 70% of the area median income. However, this ordinance only applies to residential developments of 50 units or more. So this proposal is asking for 33 townhomes, so the ADU policy doesn't apply. The newly updated Workforce dwelling unit policy, which recommends that residential development and activity centers and at higher densities such as multifamily and stacked townhouse development provide 12% of the total units as affordable units, up to 120% of AMI within for sale products, and 8% of total units as affordable units, up to 80% of AMI within rental products. However, given the proposed townhouse units and the location of the site just outside of the activity centers along Richmond Highway, this policy would not apply absent site-specific language in the comprehensive plan. Moving on to environmental comments. The environmental impact analysis is also a significant consideration for this amendment. The forested conditions on this site are a unique asset for the Richmond Highway corridor and provide a significant benefit to stormwater in the area. As mentioned previously, the 4.2 acres of unbroken tree canopy contain many species of mature trees unique to this section of Richmond Highway. This forest absorbs carbon emissions and contributes greatly to stormwater controls. Maximizing the amount of tree canopy preservation should be considered. With proposed density increases, tree preservation requirements would be reduced. If developed at 2 to 3 DOAC, tree preservation targets are 25% of undisturbed tree canopy. If developed at 5 to 8 DOAC, tree preservation targets are 20% of undisturbed tree canopy. Regarding stormwater, much of the neighborhood developed prior to county stormwater management requirements and lacks stormwater quality and quantity controls. There are multiple yard flooding complaints downstream of the property and one structural flooding complaint directly upstream at Crescent Avenue. The Department of Public Works and Environmental Systems retrofitted the existing dry pond in the adjacent townhouse community in 2011. For the site, a total of 9.4 acres of off-site and on-site drainage flows into a natural channel, which is likely an unmapped floodplain, which receives drainage from the site area. This drainage area is 137 acres. The current forested conditions are helping manage the legacy stormwater issues in the area, and consideration should be given to the preservation of existing woodland as much as possible. Conversion of the site from forested cover to impervious surfaces will require significant stormwater management requirements. Continuing the environmental comments, the county environmental policy recommends that any redevelopment maximize the preservation of existing soils and exploring soil remediation practices. The plan also recommends formal green building certification for new residential development. This policy would apply any development resulting from this plan amendment. The plan amendment would result in a minor impact from the additional units on the surrounding recreational resources relative to the adopted plan. Any development would need to provide on-site recreational amenities and should be provided to mitigate off-site parks and recreational impacts. Regarding the school's impacts, the schools serving the site are West Potomac High School, Sandburg Middle School, and Bucknell Elementary School. The Bryant High School across from the subject site is a remedial institution and does not handle conventional student volumes. Current school capacity usage is estimated per the student year 2019-2020 data. West Potomac High School is at 119% utilization. Sandburg Middle School is at 104%. And Bucknell Elementary is at 38%. Under the adopted comprehensive plan, potential student yield for the site is at the 2 to 3 DOAC intensity is projected at 6 students. This is the by right development intensity. At the 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre, which is the proposed comprehensive plan amendment, potential student yield for the site is projected at 16 students. This is a 10 student increase over the base comprehensive plan. So FCDOT is going to be doing a more in-depth presentation on this, but just to preface this, regarding the transportation situation on the site, the preferred primary vehicular access is along Hawkins Lane. This would add a roughly 113 to 180 total trips onto the road. But considering the traffic on Hawkins, this is not a very heavy load. And Verizon has agreed to allow vehicular access onto the site. Secondary multimodal access would be along either of the cul-de-sacs, either at Eastleigh Avenue or Crescent Avenue. So CDOT.
Thanks, Cedric. So we're going to talk a little bit about the existing transportation conditions around this site. The first thing is we're going to take a look at the transit service. There are 2 bus stops that are within walking distance of the site. And those are served by 3 different local bus routes. And those provide access to the south, to Inova and Fort Belvoir, and to the north to the Huntington Metro Station, as well as shopping centers both north and south in between. So between those 3, there's pretty good transit service at this site. Next slide, please. Okay, this map shows present sidewalks in green and missing sidewalk links in red. As you can see from kind of the road system on the east side of Richmond Highway, there is actually a pretty decent partial street grid in this neighborhood. And we are aware that a lot of the sidewalks are kind of built to old standards, but they are present on maybe half the sidewalks in this area. Something else to note, there are long blocks along Hawkins Lane to the south of the site. You can see it's about 1,000 feet between intersections with other roads, and also Richmond Highway to the west. And so both of those long blocks kind of break up pedestrian access a little bit to the south and west, and just make walking a little bit less convenient. But in general, the fundamentals here are pretty good for walking. Next slide, please. Okay, so we also want to take a look at existing traffic conditions. This analysis is based on traffic counts done for the BRT study in 2017. So thankfully, all pre-pandemic numbers. That analysis found the AM peak for the Hopkins Lane and Richmond Highway intersection to be 7:15 to 8:15 a.m. And there were about 200 vehicles making movements off of Hopkins. So we have heard concerns about traffic accessing both St. Louis K-8 school and Bryant High School. And we did find, based on this peak hour, students are actually arriving at those schools during the peak hour. The PM peak is 4:30 to 5:30. That did not coincide with when students would be leaving those schools in the afternoon. And again, about 120 vehicles making movements off of Hopkins Lane. So the average delay for this intersection actually was pretty low, 21 seconds, but the delay for drivers making movements off of Hopkins were significantly higher than that average for the intersection. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is from the same study looking at future conditions at the same intersection, but there are plans to realign Hopkins Lane to Collard Street. And so this actually goes from a 3-way intersection to a 4-way intersection in this analysis. The study forecasted a moderate increase in the number of vehicles coming from Hopkins Lane, both during the AM and the PM, but the intersection as a whole really low average delay and really not close to capacity. The higher delay for Hopkins Lane is really because of the long green time given to Richmond Highway. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so we did a simple trip generation analysis for the proposed plan, compared that to what's currently planned, the 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre. And we again identified a moderate increase in trips, 96 more per weekday, and a small number during the peak hour. So that's not the kind of increase that we would expect significant traffic operations issues to be caused by. Next slide, please. Okay, so we did also want to talk a little bit about the access to this site. This graphic shows the existing access to the switching station. It's a driveway in gray. The green dashed arrows show possible access to this site from existing roads. As Cedric mentioned, we are recommending that the primary vehicular access be onto Hawkins Lane. But it would also be beneficial for pedestrian and bicycle access, as well as vehicles, if there could be some kind of secondary access onto either of these roads. So definitely a lot to consider there. But next slide, please. Okay, and this we earlier I referenced the realignment of Hawkins Lane to Collard Street. This is a graphic coming from the current comprehensive plan that shows that, and then the text on the left. And the intent right now is to implement that recommendation through the bus rapid transit project, which is currently in design and being developed by Fairfax County DOT. And another consideration, you can see on this map shaded in gray, those are the Community Business Center or CBC areas. There are recommendations for street grids, which you can see in green in those CBCs, which potentially would be within walking distance of this site. Right, next slide, please. Okay, and here is a design graphic. It is absolutely a draft, but this is from the BRT project and shows a proposed alignment for Hawkins Lane meeting up with Collard Street. And so the subject site is to the south outside of the graphic, but you can see that they're proposing 4 crosswalk legs for pedestrians, as well as some changes to the intersection. All right, next slide, please. Okay, and then there are a few other relevant recommendations in the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan. This is the Countywide Trails Plan. The recommendation there is for a minor paved trail on Hawkins Lane. That's a concrete or asphalt facility, 4 foot to 7 foot 11 inches is the description in the plan. And as you can see, that's that facility would be making part of a connection between Fort Hunt Road to the east and Richmond Highway to the west. Next slide, please. And here is the bicycle master plan, which is also a part of the county's comprehensive plan. The recommended facility there is a recommended facility for Hawkins Lane, which is Sharrows. That has not been implemented today just yet. Also a recommendation for a cycle track along Richmond Highway, which is included in the area plan text for this area. But even though those have not been implemented yet, there is a pretty solid network of shared roadways that currently exists to the east of Richmond Highway, and that actually gives pretty, if you know how to navigate, actually gives pretty good access along these local streets.
Thank you, Zach. So just as a conclusion slide, the main key findings from this multi-agency analysis are the following. Firstly, the plan amendment is proposing a density greater and a different housing type than the majority of the surrounding area. County policy recommends that infill development be of compatible use, type, and density. As an extension of Memorial Heights, a neighborhood of single-family detached homes, the proposed townhouses would be out of character. Development resulting from the proposed amendment would not meet the newly updated workforce dwelling unit policies, absent site-specific guidance from this amendment. If the current recommendations were applied, potentially 3 to 4 affordable units up to 80% AMI, average median income, would be provided out of a total of 33 units. The forested conditions and 4.2 acres of unbroken tree canopy on the site are rare along the Richmond Highway corridor. The vegetation present provides valuable stormwater controls and environmental and public health benefits. For stormwater, there are legacy stormwater issues in the area, which results in flooding and drainage problems downstream of the site. This is due to the neighborhood predating the adopted county stormwater standards. This emphasizes the need for effective stormwater controls and utilizing available opportunities for passive mitigation measures. And transportation, primary access on the Hawkins lane with secondary access to Memorial Heights would add local connectivity and not significantly affect the current traffic volumes for the surrounding area. And that is the end of the presentation. Questions, comments?
Can I just be reminded, please, of the process? Are we going to listen to the nominator, or are we just going to go ahead and have ourselves address our interests and where we want to go with this?
Nominator, please.
Are we muted?
No, you're on. Cedric, if you could you stop sharing your screen? Because we still have that key findings thing up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Catherine, go ahead, Commissioner Clark.
I was going to say that we would listen to the nominator, and then we'll have the task force to then have a discussion after the nominator.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron, you want me to just go ahead and start, or Graham? Okay. Thank you again. My name is Sherry Aiken, land use planner with the law firm of McGuire Woods, and it is a pleasure to be here this evening as the nominator and on behalf of the property owner, Verizon Virginia. An excellent and thorough presentation was just completed by staff, so there really is not much I can add as to the basics of the site or what a higher density could mean for this area of the county, but they pretty much covered everything. So I don't have a PowerPoint or anything like that. The agenda said I had 8 minutes to speak tonight, but I certainly will not take that long. There is no specific development proposal for this site. The nomination was just a general request for an increase in density. There are a variety of densities in the area. A number of them are 5 to 8 dwelling units, similar to this request. So I don't believe it's out of line and is in keeping with the area. And as I mentioned in my previous presentations, the concept drawing that we submitted with this nomination showed 33 townhomes. And that is the highest density that could be achieved with a 5 to 8 dwelling unit designation. We wanted to show the highest number for discussion purposes, but that in no way means that 33 townhomes could be achieved here. We simply have not engineered the site. And during the rezoning process, there would be much more in-depth conversations with county staff as well as the community to find out what the biggest concerns and needs are. We do hope the comprehensive plan language will help to finally develop this vacant parcel of land and provide much housing or much needed housing stock for the county. However, I do need to reiterate my concerns of too specific of comprehensive plan language that does not at this time take into account the variables that will undoubtedly occur when it's engineered and during the rezoning process. I guess if I could put in my wish list, I mean, bottom line, I would like to see flexible language that allows for the greatest needs to be met here during the rezoning, as opposed to a list of everything that needs to be achieved or specific numbers in order for this site to be developed. Again, we simply do not know if 33 units can be achieved here. And probably my two biggest concerns that staff outlined tonight was the two road connections. When we had the special exception process back in 2015, we discussed with the community site access through the neighborhood. They didn't have a problem with that. Staff, through its review, felt that a new site access through Verizon's front parcel out onto Hopkins Lane would take care of traffic in a better way. But if there are less than 33 townhomes and less traffic demand, will that be required? That's all discussions that needs to be had when there's a specific development plan in place. Also for the WDU policy or comments from staff regarding that the site is not in the WD policy area. That's true. Generally, when rezonings come in, and this is the case, staff could make a request and a contribution to the Housing Trust Fund is made. Or there might be a developer who does want to provide the WDUs. It's just simply unknown. So bottom line, again, I just hope that whatever comprehensive plan language the working group comes up with and the county comes up with, I just wish and hope for flexibility so the greatest needs are met in the future when a rezoning is filed. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we now open the floor up for the task force to ask questions and have further deliberation on this matter.
This is Gretchen. I have a question. You said you met with community folks. When was this? And what did they say?
This was back Verizon went through a special exception back in 2015, and the special exception was necessary in order to carve out that back parcel for future development with a residential use. And at that time, the same comprehensive plan language is in place for 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre. So we met with the community and they did not have issues with the back of the site being developed with residential single family homes. There wasn't a development plan in place. The special exception was merely to limit the telecommunications approval for the front portion of the site, not the back portion.
So they're okay with single family, but they're not okay with townhomes.
We have not met with them about any type of development proposal for a townhome.
Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
Okay. And I think if I remember correctly, Mount Vernon Council blessed this back in 2015 to, reduce the size of what Verizon was holding. I'd like to take this conversation, if it's all right with you guys, in a totally different direction. So bear with me, okay? We the county, and it was the Mount Vernon Council that pushed this. We destroyed 20 acres of trees on Richmond Highway when we pushed for North Hill to get redeveloped. So I take a great interest in what the environmental folks just said about the 4 point whatever acres of canopy here. With that being said, I want to know if we can slow this down and not make a decision at the moment. I would like to see, I know Verizon doesn't want to hold the land. I would like to see if Verizon will go have a conversation with the Northern Virginia Conservation Land Trust people, Alan Rosum. This can, because it already is zoned for development, you can sell off the conservation credits. Verizon can get some money. You keep the park, if you will, call it a park, call it whatever you want. And then the county gets rid of the zoning that's there, and we take the WDUs and the affordable housing potential units, and we take that density, get it out of that neighborhood, move it over to the Hybla Valley nursery site, where they're going to be putting up a fire station. So you kill off a couple of birds with one stone, and we think broader than just site specific. So you get housing at a higher density because it could be condos or apartments. You get that right on Richmond Highway. You open up this point whatever acres to conservation. And I think we have a much better opportunity for working towards a more livable community. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with this. So I throw it out there for a broader conversation. And I say, and let me say why. I reread today the master market study that was just done on behalf of the Board of Supervisors by the EDA, the Economic Development Authority consultants. And they have a statement in there that just caught my eye, which says, we need to preserve opportunities for better and higher use. Well, in many cases, and don't just keep doing site-specific approvals. And that really caught my eye today as I'm thinking about all of the stuff trying to happen on Richmond Highway in our neighborhoods, in Queenie's neighborhood, in my neighborhood. So, like I said, this is going in a completely different direction. It basically would say, hold the horses, get Sherry to go talk to Verizon, get Verizon to go talk to the Conservation Trust people. I'm happy to give you their contact information and see if this is a doable do. Anyhow, that's all I have to say.
I have my hand raised. Is it okay? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to follow up with Gretchen's comment about contacting the community. And since this was a while ago, that when Verizon spoke with the community, and as Catherine also stated, that the Mount Vernon Council had approved the plan. The plan at that time was based on a lower density. So with this now being a higher density, at least twice as many homes, what are the thoughts of the community, particularly since there is a public comment about the increased density?
So Queenie, just to provide some context, we haven't heard very much from the affected community. In fact, the email or the letter that we received is the first bit of contact or opinion that we've heard from the surrounding neighbors. So unfortunately, we don't have a very
yeah.
Sorry,
and
go ahead.
This is Megan. I mean, we were, to be honest, you know, we had sent out letters to the adjacent property owners, to the adjacent HOAs, inviting them to this meeting, as well as inviting comments to provide comments for you all. So, you know, it's a bit, we're hopeful that more people would come to this meeting to get that type of that type of feedback.
Okay. because I think that it would be incumbent upon this task force to put themselves in the position of those folks that live in that area to see such an increase, knowing that Hopkins Lane is going to be the major thoroughfare and, to getting in and out. And I'm sure, and everybody knows, folks don't react like a lot of the people that are on this call and on this task force. They will be Johnny come lately, and then, of course, they're blessed the county about their inconvenience. So that was a concern of mine. And my other concern was in the presentation, Cedric, you mentioned about a townhouse development that was approved, I believe, to the east of this proposed development. And they were going to have some affordable dwelling units, but that option has now expired. So how many affordable dwelling units do you know that were approved for that development? And how do you get in an expiration for affordable dwelling units?
Hi, Queenie. So that particular townhouse development is adjacent to the site of, if you remember the graphic, it's that highlighted green area. That was approved sometime back in the 70s. So it was a, different government, different policies. They, I believe, and I may be wrong on this, but I believe they were proposing 15 units. And the agreement was that they struck with the county was that all of these units were going to be fully affordable at 80% AMI. That was the contract that they agreed. However, I believe it was later on, sometime in mid 80s, early 90s, the Planning Horizons effort changed the policies and agreements. And I believe that after that point, that comprehensive plan agreement had expired. So it no longer applies to the current units, but it was for that first batch of owners who had bought it when it was developed.
And I would just add to that, Queenie, that the townhouse development that Cedric's referring to, because of its age, it actually predates our two inclusionary zoning and planning policies, the AD ordinance, which came online later, as well as the WDU policy, which is relatively recent. So I think, as Cedric was mentioning, we were operating in a different policy landscape at the time, and we've learned since then, and we've developed a more robust approach to doing inclusionary zoning and planning since then.
So there are no proposed affordable dwelling units for that particular townhouse development. Okay. And so there are no proposed affordable dwelling units for this Verizon proposed development.
So what I was going to say is, right now, in dealing with the plan amendment, there is an amendment proposal that we're reacting to. What we're doing is just looking at the comprehensive plan. And so what we would say is, though, that given the information that we have and the authorization, which is looking specifically at a density range and on a specific site, we have kind of a maximum number of units that could be potentially provided on the site, with the 33 townhouses that we're looking at. If 33 townhouses, which is at maximum, were to be developed, it would not trigger the provisions of the affordable dwelling units, at least in terms of on-site units. So we wouldn't get any ADUs if the 33 units were to be implemented. And then, as Cedric mentioned, the WDU policy, which is a separate policy that lives in the comprehensive plan, typically deals with higher density multifamily and stacked townhouse development that's located in our activity centers. And this side of our activity centers, just a block and a half away from the CDCs along Richmond Highway. So absent, and this is kind of the crux, I guess, of what Cedric was mentioning about housing, is that because the AD ordinance doesn't apply to the site given the, and then also because of the location of the site outside of the activity centers, we wouldn't typically see an ask, so to speak, for or recommendation for WDUs that would be applicable, unless there's site-specific guidance that could be developed potentially as a result of this process, where we're looking at the comprehensive plan for the site. So we mentioned that if there is consideration for a plan amendment on the site, and workforce housing were something that the task force would support, we would want to make sure that that's referenced and included in any language that's clear for when we're setting the plan and future redevelopment takes place at the zoning stage.
Ellen, you've been very patient. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of things. First, to Queenie's point, first of all, I think we all know that right south of this is North Hill, which does have affordable units in it. But the small townhouse development right to the east of this, Queenie, was an experiment gone bad. All the houses were affordable dwelling units, but they were only allowed to earn a certain percentage of profit every year, and they had to sell to somebody else in the same, affordable. And so people ended up being foreclosed on when they had to move. It was an absolute mess. So, and so anyway, that was not good. So we don't want to go down that road again, and we don't do that. So, but my question is something that staff had in the report under the environmental things. And I heard something that kind of made my blood run cold, that said that there has been some flooding and that this could be an unmapped flood zone. Well, when I bought my place, I lived in Bellevue, and when I bought it, it was an unmapped flood zone. And we all know what happened and what has happened here. And so that is a huge concern. And I think putting in, townhouses like this is just going to be a disaster. I think that is something that we really need to look at and rethink the whole thing. So.
And speaking to that, actually the Mount Vernon Council now has a subcommittee regarding stormwater issues in the Mount Vernon district, because there's increased flooding everywhere. So looking at, as Catherine suggested earlier about looking at a conservation easement and leaving that could help some stormwater issues in the area.
Sherry, I saw your hand go up, and then Lynn,
Thanks. I don't have the ability to raise my hand. I think regarding the downstream flooding, that was something that we did talk to the neighbors about in 2015, and that's one thing that I've expressed to staff during this process, and that was their biggest concern, was that flooding. And one thing that they were looking forward to with rezoning or with a development at the back portion of the site is that any development that came through, that downstream flooding has to be fixed. So that was one of the reasons why they were fine and wanted something to go back there.
Excuse me, let me speak to that, please. Thank you. The reason the Mount Vernon Council has a special committee on stormwater, it's not just our area that has the problem, it's all over the county. And it's because infill development has come to communities, and the stormwater runoff and the flooding is just horrific. It does not get fixed. You make it worse when you remove tree canopy. So I'm back to my pitch. Let's get Verizon to go talk to the conservation people, see what you can sell this back acreage for, stop pushing for more development, and get the county to figure out how to install better and more trees. Not make it a park, it's a conservation easement, and the Northern Virginia Land Trust has volunteers and they deal with it, so we don't have to go fight with the park authority over, oh my God, I don't want another park. So that's my spiel. I personally, if we're going to do a vote, are we doing a vote tonight? What are we going to do?
Lynn, you're Your comment?
Yeah, just to run contrary to my fellow co-chair there on the MVCCA, one of the things that concerns me is we have a discussion the other night and people talked about homeless people in tents and things. I think when you're talking with the people in the area, when you're having discussion, we need to know whether they consider that woods a big plus or a negative. I mean, it's a serious issue because yes, they're not parks, and yes, they look like they're deserted areas sometimes. And as people in my condo know that I'm probably one of the biggest tree huggers here and push really hard on the question of trees and protecting them. But we need to get serious and not just put up little pieces of say this or that or the other. Do the people in the area actually consider these trees a great plus? I think they are a plus for the overall interests of the region, but I really want to know some of these dead areas that we have around here seems to gather a lot of people that people in the neighborhoods are not thrilled with. Thank you.
Good evening, task force members. My name is Brian Cately. I'm the director of urban forestry for Fairfax County. And just to address some of the tree issues, so when we look at the overall canopy of the county and we look at percentages, this particular area of the Route 1 corridor is significantly lower than many other parts of the county. So we have some issues in this corridor, some areas of Annandale and areas of Springfield. So our thoughts are that, once the land is developed, it converts, and that's it. We can re-landscape all you want, but the natural features of the soil, the drainage, the ecosystem are lost. Not only that, but we've been finding through research lately, in the last 10 to 20 years, that one of the largest emitters of carbon is deforestation. So when we talk about the county's environmental vision and how we want to so it's stormwater, it's tree canopy, it's shade, it's ecosystem, it's carbon. This is approximately 60 cars worth of carbon emission. If that's just clear, if it's cleared wholesale, the 4.7 acres, that's the equivalent of 60 car emissions a year. So when we're talking about the county's environmental vision and where we want to see the county move, this is one of those puzzle pieces. It's not the answer, right? It's not the whole answer to the issue, but it is one of the puzzle pieces. Regarding drainage, that minor floodplain does get a lot of complaints. I'm looking at, so we're part of the Department of Public Works and Environmental Services. That particular area does get a decent amount of complaints about structural flooding on Preston Avenue. So, through the watershed management plan, there were some recommendations for, neighborhood best management practices. You know what? That's like rain gardens and rain barrels, okay? When we're talking about 9.5 acres of area draining to a point on that property, we're not going to solve it through those types of BMPs. We're talking about the need of large structures to solve that level of drainage. So, from an environmental standpoint, we feel, I feel very strongly that the preservation of these 4.5 acre, what is it, 4.7 acres, would be of, large benefit to the county. But we're also, this is reality. There's legal rights that the applicant has. There are competing needs with housing and other needs, but this is one of those moments, right, where, you make a decision and that decision is imprinted on the community for a long time and in many ways cannot be reversed. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Are we on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
This is Commissioner Sargent, and Mr. Knightley, could you give us a kind of a, I'm looking for some calculations. We have a lot of focus on this particular parcel, and appreciate your comments and subject matter expertise on this. But how do we put that in perspective as we look at nominations such as this one for the Route 1 corridor in the area? How do we calculate, to your point, you know, you can't assume we're going to put all our eggs in one basket and keep them dry here. But how do we measure that? What would your suggestions be? And I think we have some flexibility in our nominating process here to talk about that.
So one of the recommendations we made was not allowing the increased density, right? So at the lower density, there's more opportunity for tree preservation. That is something, you know, by right that could already be done. And so the comprehensive plan, and forgive me, I'm not a land use planner, so I'm kind of operating outside my lane when I use these terms. So anyone from GPD who wants to clarify for me, feel free. But through this comprehensive plan amendment, it would allow for the increased density to occur, where we could just keep it at the same density that it's zoned for now, and there would be more opportunity for tree preservation, which I believe is a tree canopy, a 10-year tree canopy of 25% versus 20. So that's, you know, that's a negligible distinction, but when you're talking about all those puzzle pieces, that's one thing that can be done. You know, maybe some adjustments to the proper language that allows for, you know, throwing it out there, maybe allow for a different density type, but allow for more concise and contiguous tree canopy preservation would be another. Some extensive stormwater retrofits to ensure that, you know, as Sherry had said, that they would have to meet the existing stormwater regulations through redevelopment. I mean, that's a lot of water to treat on that particular site, but I'm sure it can be done. So that's another opportunity. And then there are some opportunity, you know, I don't know if, you know, I think Andy from the Park Authority was on here. It doesn't sound like this would necessarily be a great site for an urban pocket park, but if you look at, say, where we want to be in the county or where we want to be in the Mount Vernon district, are pocket parks something that we want to see? You know, there are areas of different areas of Northern Virginia that didn't look the way that they look now 20 years ago. If that land wasn't preserved as a park 40 years ago, would those areas look the same that they do now through all the extensive redevelopment with transportation infrastructure? I don't know, but I'm just saying, once that land is converted, it's done.
From an environmental perspective, if the site were developed, and this is all just for, you know, discussion, if the site were developed under its current 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre, and we got approximately 12 units out of that, can we estimate what kind of land would be left for preservation, trees, flood, you know, stormwater management, anything like that? And I know that's hard on this case.
I believe it would, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, it would be developed by right. If that were the case,
yeah,
then the current, correct me if I'm wrong, it would be 25% tree canopy target. And so the applicant would have some flexibility in their design. So it wouldn't be like we could definitely preserve X, Y, or Z. Through the proper process, there may be opportunity to negotiate with the applicant to get, you know, a more favorable natural resource tree canopy preservation insured. I'm not sure how that works legally, but so you risk that too, right? So through the by right development process, it may not be as favorable, because as long as they meet those tree canopy targets, they can develop the site kind of as is.
Okay.
You know, Virginia is a very strong property rights state, which has a lot of benefits to it. And this is one of those. So they're all things that need to be factored in. You know, do you lose something by allowing it to develop by right?
Yeah.
We've seen that happen in the county also.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Great. Yes, great.
I more questions for staff. This is Commissioner Sargent. I'm going to harken back to Catherine Ward's comments for a moment and her suggestion. I appreciate staff's opinions regarding that kind of consideration in this process as a nominating process versus if you were to do it beyond, you know, like the application process as opposed to nominating. What is the difference? Can we, you know, I'm trying to address Catherine's comments. Can you, that seems to me to be more of a negotiating initiative than a nominating initiative. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me, I'm just trying to get a sense of how that would fit into this process.
I'll start with that, and Megan, if you want to jump in, kick me under the table, feel free. I would agree with you, Commissioner Sargent, that, you know, looking at an alternative that's outside of the authorization, it's not that it can't be done. I think that it just becomes something separate and apart from, you know, this particular authorization. So, you know, if the task force were interested in an alternative, I think that what we would be looking at for this plan amendment is most likely a deferral of the task force's review of this particular plan amendment, or a vote, and what that vote might be. If it's going to be a negative vote, that would be, you know, forwarded to the Planning Commission with the considerations. You know, but I think that in terms of what the authorization is for, it's for studying the requested and the authorized plan amendment, which is for 5 to 8 dwelling units to the acre. That being said, you know, within that, you have the ability to look at lower density options, but in terms of a totally different mix of land uses. So preservation, you know, a public or private conservation area, for example, that's fairly outside of the authorized study, but it's not outside of the realm of possibility, you know, outside of the SSPA process. So, Megan, anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, can I comment?
I would just,
Megan, could you excuse me a second? My point was, Verizon owns this dirt. I'm quite certain Verizon just wants to be rid of it. I'm quite certain, and Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, that nobody in Verizon or their land use attorneys thought about canceling the whole thing if they could get conservation trust credits sold on this dirt, because all Verizon wants is money. They want to get rid of this. And I will tell you, I've been doing an awful lot of work with the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust lately. And I was shocked that in the 3 little lots I own that my property is allowed to be developed into, tiny little lots, it's an amazing amount of money I can get for that if I decided to put it in conservation easement. So my request was, can we stop making a vote on this thing right at the moment? Have Sherry talk to the Conservation Trust if Verizon's willing, and if there's some opportunity there, then perhaps, you know, it's up to the nominator to just go, whoa, I got a better idea here. We don't want to sell it. We're going to sell the credits to the trust. That may take a few days. I don't know. It may take a week. So that's what I was suggesting. We ought to just wait for a moment, let them go look at that as an option. Now, Sherry may say, hey, forget it. We're not even closely interested. But that's what I was suggesting we do.
Catherine, thank you for your comments. I can't speak to what Verizon would say. I mean, I certainly will convey your thoughts tomorrow.
Megan, did you have comments too, or?
I was just going to add to what Graham was saying, in terms of the process and the authorization. I mean, a lot of it comes down to, as Graham mentioned, what is the level of what is the what does a reasonable or what is a reasonable assumption of how this land could be developed, or the proposed amendment for based on the authorization, and if the change is sort of wildly out of character or something like that, that there's not a reasonable person wouldn't know that that was being looked at. So I think we just need to make sure that what we're sort of looking at and talking about is something that we have told the community that we're looking at and talking about. And as well, when we get to the board hearing, we want to make sure that we're advertising, we're advertising the plan amendment as, what the authorization was, which is the bounds of what the board would be looking at. But then also, if there was an alternative, we have to make sure that we do that too, so that somebody who is interested in what this plan amendment may entail can read through that authorization, can read through the advertisement, and get a good sense of what the change may be. So it really comes down to that, just making sure we are giving people a good sense of what it is that this group is considering from the beginning, and as we move through the advertisement of the public hearing process.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have the schedule in front of me. Can I ask staff, when is the task force scheduled to vote on this nomination?
April.
That would be at the next meeting.
Right.
Next meeting, April 13th.
April 13th
Right,
meeting?
and that's also when we would be presenting our preliminary staff recommendation as well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from the task force?
Yes, this is Queenie.
Yes.
So I guess for clarification, if we wanted to pursue Catherine's suggestion, what would this task force need to do tonight? Or would we have to wait until the next meeting to do so? Because if the task force is interested in pursuing Catherine's recommendation, then I think that time would be of the essence for us to make that decision tonight, so that Sherry can go back to Verizon, and that would give them time. I'm just putting that out there because there seems to be some type of interest in pursuing an alternative to what the task force would recommend for this particular nomination.
Mr. Chairman, I'll break the silence here. I think I think what we're looking at is the nominator making the choice of whether to pursue something outside of their current nomination, and that doesn't preclude the task force coming up with its own comments and recommendations. But the staff has been authorized to look at 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre as part of the nomination, and whether that would be appropriate plan amendment language for the change here. So I think it's up to the nominator to take back the information received this evening from Catherine and others, and say, what do you think? And hopefully get word to staff and provide the comment. And meanwhile, I think we've had, from the environmental perspective, we've had some very good testimony, very helpful testimony this evening to provide a perspective of the site. So, and I include staff in that providing perspective. So it gives us some time to think about. Gives you, the task force, some time to think about where you want to go, and gives Sherry some time to kind of check in with who she needs to check in with and decide if and how they want to change anything, and whether they'd like to continue on the track they're on. So that's my 2 cents. we've advertised this process as a consideration of 5-day dwelling units per acre as the nomination. That's part of the challenge here. So doesn't preclude task force members with coming up with an alternative recommendation, but something you could vote on. But at the same time, we have to, staff is tasked with looking at 5-day dwelling units per acre.
Yeah, I guess my thing though is, even though it was advertised as 5 to 8 dwelling units, tonight we learned additional information that could very well influence what we would like to move forward with. Which would be Catherine's recommendation, which could be to not approve the 5 to 8, to approve the lower density. So we do have those options. So that's why I was putting that out there, that we, because we didn't have this information beforehand. All we knew initially was to evaluate the nomination based on 5 to 8 dwelling units.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is Gretchen. I'm going to say the same thing, because the community, when Verizon met with them, was understanding, the regular 2 to 3 homes per acre, not more. So we only have community from something years ago, not anything current, and what they think about it. And we all know that no one's going to pay attention until the dirt starts digging. I mean, the trucks come in and start digging things. So we do need to reach out to them and say, hey, we need your input on this.
Yeah. Okay.
And enforce. I mean, we can reach out for the Mount Vernon Council. I can certainly reach out and say, hey, we really need your input here. Need you to pay attention.
Mr. Chairman, just another question for staff. You're tentatively, the task force is scheduled to vote on the nomination at the next meeting on April 13th. However, if that does not occur, what's the next date for a vote?
Carryover? Carryover meeting that could be used on the 27th.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just bringing that up just in case, because there seems to be additional, some requests for additional information and consideration here.
And so I would also ask the staff, since this is on the expedited track, is it possible to move this out of the expedited track and into the regular track, which is the second half of our task force? And I may be kind of putting us all on the spot right now, but I guess it's something that we can discuss on the 13th. That would be up for discussion on the 13th, I guess.
Mr. Chairman, I think that also, calls upon the nominator to consider how they want to go forward too. They may say, no, we'd like to wrap this up on the 13th. They may go for the carryover, or they may, we'll see.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I mean, I would like to move forward on the expedited track. We keep speaking to 33 units on this site, but again, there's no proposal at this time for any type of specific development. Staff might be able to help me out with this, but you have ranges in the comprehensive plan of X number of units, and we merely, with this nomination, went up to the next allowable range. And Cedric might be able to tell me, is it 3 to 4? And then it went from 5 to 8. But my point being is that Verizon in 2015 went through the special exception process to remove this parcel from this telecommunications use so it could be developed with residential use. We didn't have any developers willing to take on what it would take to develop single family houses because of the costs it would take to fix that downstream drainage, to develop the site to something that the county would require. So at 5 to 8 dwelling units, which is the next one we can do, Again, it doesn't mean that 33 units are going to be developed here. We would have to go through a rezoning process. The community, site conditions, county requirements could very well dictate that a lower number of units could only be achieved here. But at the same time, going through the rezoning process, going through a regulatory review, we could get things like achieve as much tree save as we can. We could get more housing stock in Fairfax County, and it would give opportunities for the site as opposed to what the comprehensive plan limits it to currently. So I hope that all that made sense. But to get to Queenie's point, to Gretchen's point, there's no development proposal at this time. And when we would go through the rezoning process, that's when we could have very in-depth discussions with the community to find out what their concerns and needs are.
This is Catherine. We can keep going around in circles. It's getting late and we have another nomination. I would like to put the following forward since I started this nightmare. We don't have to vote tonight. We've all made our comments. Sherry has made hers. Sherry has said she would go and talk to Verizon. I would hope you also pick up a phone and have Verizon speak to the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust people, because you may be incredibly surprised how much money they can get for selling off this 4.5 acres, and that may satisfy them and they'll be quiet. And then we can either pull the thing out of the plan altogether because Verizon says I own it and I don't want it developed, or, and that's simply a notification to the world, hey, I don't have to keep moving as a county staff on this if the owner says I'm done. Or they come back and say, nope, forget it, we want to keep charging forward. Northern Virginia Conservation Trust people say not interested. And then we get to vote. We get to say, keep the plan the way it is, or we get to tell Sherry and her crowd, okay, we'll give you a little more density bump. So I think we're just going around in circles at the moment. So I'd like to just put this to bed and have Sherry do her thing, and we'll do our thing next week.
So, Catherine, real quick, have you spoken with the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust? Do you know?
Well, I will tell you, Walter, this just hit me today when I was reviewing the documents, and I have texted Alan Rosum while we were talking, and I have a meeting with him anyway tomorrow on River Farm, so I will raise it with him then.
Catherine, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but somebody's got their mic open and we're getting a lot of feedback. Could everybody mute while Catherine's talking? Thank you. Go ahead, Catherine.
What I was saying is that I texted Alan Rosum while we were here tonight because of my brilliance when I just realized what this could be and how we could get value out of it, and Verizon could potentially get value. So I have a meeting with him tomorrow on River Farm, so I will raise it with him again, but it's really between Sherry, the owner, Verizon, and the Conservation Trust to have a conversation in depth about what's the part of the possibility, which I think can get done in a week before we meet, and we'll know something.
Okay, thank you. That sounds great. And I have a quick question for FCDOT, if they're still available. Question is, why do we see Hawkins Lane as the primary access if this site was to be developed? Why is Hawkins Lane seen as the primary access?
Yeah, so the preference, I guess, is for two reasons. One, based on policy, it's considered a collector. So unlike East Lee and Preston, which are local streets, and the other really is that it's planned for that signalized intersection with Richmond Highway and Collard Street, and it would just be easier, more convenient for access to the site if you have the signal, because you can do all all directions of movements rather than having to kind of weave through the neighborhoods if the primary access was Easterly or Preston.
And so the plan would be, you would have dedicated lanes to go right and left onto Richmond Highway off of Hawkins?
Yeah, so I guess I do want to caution that the BRT design is still, it's still ongoing, but the most current plan did have, yes, a right turn lane and a left turn lane.
Okay. Okay,
Which,
thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you then. If there are no other questions or comments from the task force, I'd like to open up to the public for questions and comments if we have
There
anyone.
is one attendee from the public. I can't tell if they wish to speak or not. They haven't raised their hand. Mr. Jansen, you can dial *3 on your phone, or I'll just unmute you right now when I do that. There we go. If you have a question, Mr. Jansen, you're free to go ahead and ask.
Yeah, sound check. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for calling on me. However, I'm not quite sure I was given the information in the correct meeting. I was in touch with the gentleman named Nicholas earlier today about the plot at 2550 Huntington Avenue, and
that's going to be discussed actually in a few minutes. But
okay, I will hold until that one then. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Anyone else, Aaron?
Commissioner Clark, I just wanted to make one statement regarding density. What the current plan for the site is 3 to 4 dwelling units to the acre. In the plan, we do have ranges, so that 3 to 4 units to the acre is what the current plan recommendation is for. What's been requested is 5 to 8 dwelling units to the acre. So there actually is a middle ground, so to speak, or kind of an alternative at a lower density, which is between the two. It's 4 to 5 dwelling units to the acre. So that is another planned density range. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that as the task force is considering, the range of alternatives on the site. So just wanted to bring that.
And I would just add to that so right now they're zoned R3, and the comp plan has a higher density at 3 to 4 that they could rezone to. So that would involve proper negotiations, even as part of getting to the highest level of the current plan as well. So I think that's something I'd like people to keep in mind as well. And of course, that would be a part of if they went to a PDH 5 or a PDH 8 or something higher.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if we think we got this one wrapped, we will come back and discuss and maybe have a vote next week on the 13th for Hawkins Lane. Are we ready to move on to have some additional considerations for Huntington Avenue?
Yes, please.
All right. So,
yes, I'm just trying to share my screen here.
and real quick, Aaron, before you go on, I want to thank Sherry for presenting tonight and answering our questions and being here tonight. So thank you very much, Sherry, for that.
Okay.
She left already.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. Can you all see that?
We can see now, yes.
Okay. Just. Okay. So for 2550 Huntington Avenue, we just wanted to present some additional information to the task force regarding the development, the future development potential in the Huntington area. Some additional information that we didn't have for you last week. So some additional considerations from the EDA Richmond Highway study. Again, first of all, it talked about, long-term trends in office shifting away from single-use suburban style office parks to more urban style offices located near transit and metro rail areas. And these, of course, are the prime areas to attract and retain employees. These office developments in these areas have more amenities in terms of access to retail and other services, and urban parks, and of course, access to the future BRT stations and the metro rail access. And it will also have higher quality urban open spaces that also act to attract new customers. And one of the other things that the report emphasized, and I did mention this last week, is that mainly in the Huntington area and the Richmond Highway Corridor area, the office users are those that are looking to serve the local market. So we're talking about community serving users such as doctors, dentists, accountants, insurance agents, etc. And one of the other things that the report said was that with the HQ2 Amazon headquarters coming, they did have a prediction in the report that they expected some kind of restoration of the office market equilibrium by the year 2026. Again, the advantages of locating offices and other community services in this area with access to Metro and the BRT and the existing local bus lines, but also that people in the area can walk to these services and have a car-free lifestyle. Also that because of the proposed development across the street, across Huntington Avenue with the Huntington Club, this is a chance to activate Huntington Avenue in a way and create a vibrant streetscape that does not exist today. And it's also a chance to distribute. The other point I should say is that retail and other services should be distributed among different developments throughout the Huntington area, not just concentrated in one. So this map shows you planned development throughout the area here, and it's showing planned residential development and also the number of new residents that would come with those new residential units. And it also shows mixed-use developments throughout the Huntington and North Gateway area here. And of course, those other mixed-use developments include a residential component. So the point here is we're going to be seeing thousands of new residents to the area, and they need services and they need retail. And having it within walking distance is the preference here, rather than having these people have to get in their cars and go out to Richmond Highway to access those services. So just a couple of examples here. One of the things we talked about before and that we've been talking about with the nominator is, can you do first and second floor combinations of retail and or service uses? So on the left side of the slide here, this is Fairfax Corner. And here you see a first floor retail and then a service use above. So we have a dentist's office above retail here on the first photo, and then on the bottom photo, we've got a spa above this retail store. And then on the right side of the screen these are photos from the Hilltop Village Center where the Wegmans is down on Viola Street and Telegraph Road. And again, similar, you've got first floor retail with second floor service uses. So just in conclusion, with the proposed 210 new units with 2550 Huntington Avenue. That would result in almost 500 new residents. One of the things that would be a wonderful part of this new development would be a signature plaza park at the corner of Huntington Avenue and Metroview Parkway that would serve as a gateway to the Huntington transit station area. And there's also an opportunity for coordinated development with the parcel to the west. And this could provide a couple of things. This would allow or make it easier to do a more mixed use development, but also there would be room along Cameron Run in the parcels that are farthest to the west that are currently almost completely in the floodplain right now, to do more active recreation uses that would serve these new residents, and they will need the more active recreational uses as well as the Cameron Run Trail. So that's it.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Questions, comments from the task force?
Will there be an opportunity for a representative of the nominator to speak?
That's what I'd like to hear. I'd like to
Yeah,
hear.
I want to hear from you guys, please.
Yes, please.
Would now be an appropriate time? Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Lynn Strobel, and I represent the nominator on this proposal. And I appreciate Aaron's comments, and I believe that Steve Bannister is also on the line, and he represents the ownership of this parcel. I appreciate very much what Aaron is saying about the desire for non-residential use in this building. And we have said and repeatedly said that we will have first floor retail uses. I think second floor retail is extremely difficult. I don't think that that's feasible, but I know that staff is very desirous of that second floor office. We've thought about this a lot. What concerns us is that we have not seen a demand for office in this area. Mr. Bannister also has the ownership interest in the office building next door. He has been there for, I think, about 7 years. He has not seen, I don't believe he's at 100% fully leased office building. He's had negative absorption, especially in the last, I think, year with COVID. Everything we see in newspaper articles are, is troubles with office space. We've seen it with the Patent and Trademark Office, which is on the other side it's very close. It's on the other side of the Beltway from this. They're thinking about giving up 1 million square feet. We've seen many articles about really the lack of market for office. So it's a real concern for us. This project was approved in 2012, actually 2 office buildings on the site. It's been 9 years. There's been no market for that. The study that was cited says that, well, maybe it'll come back in 2026. So, I mean, do we want to wait for another 5 years just for something that we really have not seen a demand for? So I just wanted to speak up and say that we appreciate where staff's coming from. I do think that we are working very hard on providing a very nice plaza at the corner that will be an amenity. It'll be kind of a focal point. We will have first floor retail. We'll work very hard for that, but we are trying to provide the residents to make this a vibrant area and generate the need for retail and offices. And there's plenty of approved non-residential development between Huntington Club, the metro station site, and others. So I will leave it at that. I'll also point out that Mr. Bannister is ready to begin this project. He's not in a position that he would wait. He would like to get going on this and see something happen. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, and if he's available, I'm sure he would answer questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strobel. Now, task force members, questions, concerns, comments?
Megan.
Oh, Megan, I'm sorry. Megan has a hand
Hi there. I just wanted to kind of be clear, because I think we're sort of talking past each other a little bit, that, we agree with and recognize what Lynn is talking about and recognize the office changes with the Eisenhower Avenue, with the Patent and Trademark Office. Certainly HQ2 will take some time to ripple down to Richmond Highway, if at all, with the contractors and the tenants. But we're really not talking about that. We're talking about the difference between, I would say, 13,000 and 25,000 square feet of space that is not going to be a place for contractors to go. It will not be, it is nothing, it is not a single tenant building that is anyway comparable to the 250,000 square foot office building that is approved on this site. We're talking about the difference between having something like a Starbucks and a salon to having something like a Starbucks, a salon, and maybe some room for a dentist office and a pharmacy, or potentially even a very small sort of grocery store or delicatessen that could be there, because right now the area really is serviced by the 7-Eleven and a small restaurant. And so we want to make sure that we have a nominal amount of space that could be used for some services for those new people that are living in that building, and can be built upon as part of what we would consider, the vision for Huntington Avenue, sort of as this main street that could be mirrored by retail and restaurants on the Huntington Club property as well. Because we're not talking about, we recognize what Lynn is saying, in that there is a lot of additional, non-residential development in the Huntington Club, likely on the WMATA site as well when it comes through. But we really want to see them distributed throughout the area, so we're not just consolidating the services for residents in one particular area. That it's really sort of evenly distributed, so that we can get that little, village Main Street feel for the road, for the roadway down there, because right now the option for people to go to commercial is that small shopping center that's up the way, or they have to walk up the hill to get to PennDOT and the Walmart, and that's not sufficient. And if we're adding new people in there, we really need to think about, what does it mean to have first floor retail versus what does it mean to have something a little bit greater than that. And if we have a design that has a podium, you can get parking to have direct access for people to come up to the second floor. You can make that design work. It is proven in other areas within the county. And so I just wanted to make sure we are kind of talking the same language, in that, we understand that single tenant is not going to happen, but we know that there will be people coming online, and we want to make sure that they have services. And if it's, I want to keep in mind that 2026 is not that far away from now, and going through the beyond the plan amendment, going through the PCA and the site plan process, getting the permitting done, 2026 is a blink of an eye. So I think we should be keeping that in mind as well. And if we want to be flexible in thinking about, some type of adaptable space, like a live work on the second floor, where there could be the potential for either a living a unit that might be something where somebody could live, but also could be a home office. Or if you've got a entrepreneur who's living in the building, perhaps he takes the space to also have some type of meeting rooms or something like that, where he might need to meet clients, or she or they. So I mean, that's what we're really thinking about. It's not, I would say it's not that much more, and we think that it really could end up serving a greater need for the area.
And then I don't want to get in, I mean, I know this is not a debate, but the only thing I will say is that the office building that's there today next to this would be ideal for the services that you talk about. A dentist, I mean, it's not a huge building, it's not a single user building, and I don't think it's even 70% leased right now. So there is just no demand. I don't know how else to say it. but there is no demand in this area. And we're more than willing to have first floor retail, to have the activated streetscape, to have an activated storefront and restaurants, maybe a deli. So more than willing to work with you on this. I'm just concerned about creating, we want, you know, to strive for success. And I think that we're really concerned about having a vacant second floor. But I won't debate the point. I think everyone knows kind of where we are. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Lynn.
I think Ellen has a question, then I have a question. I can't figure out how to raise my hand, sorry.
Okay, Ellen?
Anyway, yes. So, you know, I don't know that people are speaking at cross purposes here. I think what we're looking at is, you know, Megan, I don't mean disrespect, but it's like perfect world versus real world. And there just is not the demand. And I will tell you, we have 3 buildings here in Bellevue that are zoned residential and commercial. There are some businesses, and every single one that has sold in the last 3 years has gone from commercial to residential because there's no market for commercial. And what we're doing, if we were to insist that they do the first 2 floors, what we're doing is stopping, we're tying the owner's hands, we're stopping development, so we end up with nothing. And I think we have to deal with real circumstances, and there isn't the market, so.
Catherine?
Thank you. This is for the nominator. Remind me, please, how many square feet of retail / commercial you intend on the first floor?
I apologize. Give me a minute and I will find that.
Okay.
I think it's about, and if Steve's on the line, he can correct me, I think it's about 12,000 square feet that
Okay,
would be on the first floor.
So rough order of magnitude, you know, we're talking coffee shop, deli, whatever the case may be that you can actually get there. What,
Right.
how many different entities could you fit in the 12,000 square feet? And I don't want to hold you to it, but give me a rough order of magnitude, Stephen. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Steve Bannister. Hi. You can probably get up to 8 different uses in there. These type of retailers generally want smaller space. They need to be very space efficient. But you know, 1,500 square feet would get you 8. If you do 2,000-foot bays, you could do 6. Of course, it depends on who you get, but we would have that flexibility. We're just resisting the second floor because
No, I hear, listen, I'm on your side on this. I just wanted to understand that. I don't think a second floor is a good option at all personally. But I wanted to understand how many could get in there. Yeah. And then just because it's considered retail, in my mind, it's commercial. So it doesn't mean there can't be a dentist there and the guy or gal can live upstairs. So you can kind of work through that. I have one other question not related to this project, but on your other building that you own on the other side of the Parker, could someone please tell me the status of you starting on that redesign, rebuild, whatever? And I ask it for a reason, please. So what we do, say 3.0 FAR on that sucker, so where are we with that? Because that would give commercial, more retail, more whatever, parks, office, and livable. So again, where are you with that, Stephen?
We're imagining the same kind of discussion we're having on 2550 in terms of use. It was approved for close to 3.0 FAR, at least in terms of comprehensive plan amendment. We still have tenancy. We have about 75% occupancy, including my company. And those leases are sunsetting in about 3 years for the most part. So we're thinking that we're about 3 years out. We probably would bring the zoning in sooner to be ready, but we envision that being a little behind this one. So we'd like to kind of get this one going and then bring that in right behind it.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Ellen, I guess, again, not to beat up on staff, because you guys work so hard. But I just remember when we blessed the Beacon at Groveton and there was an absolute put my foot down, county staff wanted retail on the ground floor. And now part of it was because the owner wanted to charge too much a square foot. And Stephen, you're not going to do that. You're going to give them a break so people actually show up and rent your space. But we had a perfect storm. Staff demanded. The owner wanted to charge too much. He thought he was in New York City. But what we ended up with was a mattress store. This is not a good thing just because philosophically, and I went to university and they taught me how to be a planner that says I need to do this thing. So Megan, please accept my apology, but we can't, I'm not going to vote for a second floor anything there. So anyhow, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine.
And this is Gretchen. We had this discussion in committee for planning and zoning. I mean, we had a lengthy discussion in this, and I don't think anyone was really thrilled about a second floor then for commercial.
Thank you, Gretchen. Anyone else? So I believe, Aaron, we did have a gentleman on the line for the public. I know we had one person from the
Yes.
public to speak on this matter. So I
Okay.
guess we can open the line up for Mr. Jansen.
Mr. Jansen, you're unmuted. Mr. Jansen, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, it's the star 3. So I live across the street from the development at the Midtown at Alexandria Condos. And my concern with this is reading through the plan. There is currently just the one traffic light at Huntington and Metroview Station, servicing the Dalton development, the Midtown development, the roughly 40 to 50 townhomes to the east of Midtown, plus the the Huntington Crossings project going directly north of Midtown, and then adding in another 15-story building, mixed residential, commercial, regardless of what that ends up being. As a side note, I'm wholly in favor as a resident of the area of having someplace that's reasonable and convenient to walk to, where I don't have to get in my car. But my concern is there's one traffic light with a single left turn lane that has to yield to buses and other traffic coming out of the metro station to service the 3 existing plus 2 potential brand new developments. My question or comment is, has there been any turn lane improvements, any further access to Huntington to help mitigate? I know there's the report I read, 4,000 to 6,000 trips with this new potential development, plus obviously non-zero amount with the Huntington Crossings. Has there been any way to mitigate the additional traffic flow caused by this? Over.
Thank you, Mr. Jansen. Staff, who wants to take a step? Is FC Dot still with us?
Yep, we reps from CDOT that are on the call. I would preface their discussion by just mentioning just one thing in particular, that in our analysis and what we're dealing with is specifically the comprehensive plan, which typically doesn't get into kind of intersection, like whether something warrants a traffic signal or a stop sign at this level. It absolutely does get looked at during the rezoning stage, and it takes into account surrounding developments. So it's not that we aren't looking at it, it's that it will happen at the appropriate time. But I'll let Tom and Zach, if he wants to add to that, to describe kind of what we do in terms of a traffic impact analysis.
I actually reviewed the traffic analysis that was associated with the rezoning back in 2012, I think, like Lynn said, and there are some turn lane improvements I don't know if they've been done yet or whether they were triggered by the office. But there were improvements to the intersection that were associated with the entire development that included the office. Now we're removing the office and replacing it with residential, which generates less trips. So we should still be okay. We'll have to look at the proffers to make sure that everything still gets done. I don't know if Lynn, if your team has thought about that, but for some reason I want to say there was a eastbound left turn lane improvement that may have been part of the proffers.
It's pretty early for us to be doing that analysis, kind of at the comprehensive plan stage, but certainly we'll be evaluating that.
No, I'm saying it was the traffic analysis associated with the zoning back in 2012, which made sure everything worked.
And I would just add, part of the comprehensive plan amendment is not looking, the way that we look at it during the planning process is not necessarily what they're proposing against what's out there right now, but what is the benefit of the proposal or the negative effect of the proposal against what's in the current plan right now. So what we looked at was the proposed residential against the approved office building. So that was a different type of trip, and it was a overall fewer trips across the day than what the approved office would be. So there's a benefit in there, although the peak hours are different. The overall daily trips are lower.
Right.
Can I just, I think there's a little confusion there because the member of the public was talking, said something about 15 stories. That's what it's approved for now, a hotel and office. But what the request here is to turn residential, and it's not going to be 15 stories anymore. So it's only 210 units versus some 700 before or something. So, you know, it's not what you thought it was.
Good point, Ellen.
Mr. Chair, are you open for further comments?
Yes,
Yeah, so
yes, sir.
Just to summarize it.
I'm sorry, it's Len Pasco. I was just going to make a couple of comments. I just smiled slightly when and I don't intend to pile on either, when the staff was talking about the place by Wegmans where the second floor was turned into a sort of a hairdresser's row for salons and such. No matter how much Mr. Bannister is generous and making low rents, I can't imagine that right across from the station in that kind of building, you would have any market for that kind of buildings, that kind of services. We have been over this so many times, and everything people said was familiar and such. But I just can't see in my own mind that it's worth in any sense waiting and waiting and waiting on this question for a second floor that's never going to materialize, or at least not in the near future. And we've got a tremendous amount of development going on in that area over the next time. And some of the things across the way, frankly, in the metro area there, maybe at that time there's going to be a need for a lot more businesses, and we can have this same argument 5 years from now about getting them in there. But I just don't see it in the building that we're talking about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is Mr. Jansen still on the line, and did he have further comment?
Yes, sir. So just to summarize, it sounds like I have jumped the gun a bit on my concerns, and I need to just stay involved with the process. And as far as the traffic considerations go, and stay involved for further down the line pending the results of this.
Yes, thank you for the comments and staying involved, definitely.
Okay, and then just for I guess what is appropriate for what I've heard tonight, I would, as a resident in this area, has to get in the car and go pretty much anywhere to do anything. I would, if there's something across the street, a coffee shop, deli, anything like that I could go to, I would. Same with the park, I think that was mentioned, that would highly in favor of having fewer car trips myself. However, that ends up looking with this particular site. Over.
Mr. Jensen, this is Catherine Ward and my colleague Lynn Pasco. We're both co-chairs of the Mount Vernon Council of Citizens Association, so probably inappropriate, but I'm going to do it anyway because that's who I am. Cheap advertising. Your community is a member of the Mount Vernon Council, and we stay to our Planning and Zoning Committee. Gretchen Loiselle is on this call as well. We stay very, very up on everything that's going on. So it's, you know, instead of waiting for one of these or waiting for the county to send you a postcard, please reach out to your community, to the Mount Vernon Council, and we can keep you informed. Thank you.
And this is Gretchen, the chair of the Planning and Zoning, and we meet the first Monday of every month. In fact, we just had a meeting last evening, and we invite community to participate and find out what's going on. And also to this particular project, it was originally 15 stories, and I believe at our last meeting, committee meeting, it was discussed that it would be closer to 8 stories. So again, those are things we've already discussed, and that's what we're moving for. We'd like to see move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the information. I'll try to track down more of that on my end and stay better informed.
If you go to our website, mvcca.org, it tells you exactly when the committee meets and my contact information. So you can certainly reach out and I can add you to my list.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you for that information. And Mr. Jensen, I hope that'll be helpful for you. And we look forward to hearing from you in the future. Aaron, anyone else on the line from the public?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. So, are there any other comments for the good of the group? And I'm sorry we've gone over a little bit this evening. We got started a little bit later than what we wanted to, but I think everyone has done a great job in their comments, and we've had a lot shared tonight. We've learned a lot. Any further comments for the good of the group? Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, do we hear a motion to adjourn?
So
moved. Who moved?
I moved.
I think Ellen and I did it at the same time, but
Gretchen put her name in there too, so.
We have a double motion to adjourn. That's
Okay,
enthusiasm.
triple, but let's move it.
You got it. And do I hear a second?
This is Evan, and I second that.
Thank you, sir. All in favor?
and staff,
I'm
thank
sure
you.
Thank
Yes,
you very
staff,
much,
thank
but
you
go
very
ahead.
much.
Thank you very much for working so hard and putting up with us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, staff, and thank you, everyone. So we'll see you next time.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Ciao.
Good night.
Thank you all.